Test. Let's see if it's all the way up. I guess I could turn it on and do a test just to be safe.
Just transcribing you.
Is it still,
Yeah.
Well, the Zoom is on.
the Zoom is recording?
No, it's paused. The recording.
It just still is listening to me talk to you.
With the source because we changed it.
So we still have to do it now?
Yes, this is what. The loop back
This one?
here.
All right, I'm gonna,
Looks like that.
it looks like it's doing it. But again, it'll be different when the Zoom starts. So
Well,
hopefully.
it should be okay, but I just want to make sure because that's what they were having.
Where I cannot pass, go, so I'm gonna just. Oh, yeah, perfect.
Oh, I got the Zoom later.
Hmm.
There it is.
Oh,
Mine was-
What?
Got all in the meeting and I got the X,
Oh, for
just
about
close
the
right out,
recording?
not to join, like Yeah, I didn't leave meeting.
Yeah, you have
Got
to
it.
do.
Oh,
You were having big problems.
there we go. Yeah, someone's was on and we couldn't figure out whose it was.
Oh, okay.
That was the iPad stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's good to know.
Should I recreate?
On Apple, right?
yeah, right.
Take
Or the whole
this
region for
replay
every.
meeting as-
It's kind of scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah. It was like, you want to replay and post? No, I'll stay a co-host thing.
That's weird.
Hostile takeover.
Are you on as Cottonwood Heights?
Oh,
Are you?
We have two, that's why.
oh, it
Do you,
started
it's signed in as your other one. That's why you're trying to have a hostage takeover.
started who? Our old Boyd is an attendee. It's been quite weird lately when I've been doing it.
They shouldn't put you in as an attendant.
Because it auto signs me as Cottonwood Heights every time.
Thanks for promptly answering that. Answer your hands.
Oh, I was sitting right there in council meeting, so
Yeah.
listening to,
Just donate.
yeah, fair enough.
Or just put it into your,
Just, yeah, we'll leave it there, yep.
Should put it into the employee appreciation fund. Oh, wait. Feeling better.
oh. That's okay.
For Wednesday.
It is a Wednesday.
par for the
Here I
course.
had a Monday and a Tuesday.
I do not want to join.
I did it again. It's fine. What doesn't matter? You're still in there.
Oh, I can probably rename myself.
Yeah.
I want to stay the co-host.
I'm not sure which one's you.
Rename.
There you go.
I'm just still showing the Cottonwood Heights logo.
Yeah.
It's like not
It's
letting
okay.
me join as me. It's just making me join as Cottonwood Heights. I don't know.
What did you do?
I don't know.
There
There we go. Yeah.
You did it.
That's fine, as long as it's not gonna throw anything off for Heather, if she has a competing Cottonwood.
Where's our fearless chair?
I think.
Oh, he said he's on his way.
Okay, we need a chair.
Jesse emailed and said he is on his way.
How long ago?
Just call it JST. Jesse Standard.
Yeah,
That's what everyone used to say about Andy.
like a standard time.
He emailed at 4:40 and said I'm on my way.
It is, the Holka standard time is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Got some insight on that one.
It was specifically our building
For
department.
for a little over 18 years, they said on that one.
We had lunch with him the other day.
Oh, did you?
That was really fun to see him.
I haven't seen him for.
He was
Probably-
bragging because he didn't have to work that Friday because he's off every other now.
You got the perfect job. So,
We are,
is that on record?
No.
Send it to him. Please do.
we are
I
missing,
would say it straight to his.
Yeah.
but we did hire a new planner. So
Who did you guys have?
his name is Ian. He comes from South Jordan, worked for South Jordan for a year. So
Okay.
he'll probably be coming to the
Well,
December
well,
meeting with you guys.
Speak of the devil.
Hey, Jesse.
Hey, Jesse.
We have a new called JST.
Jesse Standard Time. Yeah.
I
sorry
was
about
not
that.
part of that. That was all this needs.
Fair enough.
Okay, you've got an agenda and then we'll get you the sign-in sheet if you guys want to
On
talk about that.
Traveler on.
Commissioner Ebler's online, so we've got a quorum. Jessica's here online as well, so.
Right, so we're good.
Yeah, as soon as, let me, are you ready to go? Okay, let me kick this on and. Hey, you are recording now.
All right, so we'll call to order the November 2nd, 2022 Cottonwood Heights Planning Commission working session. There will be no business session tonight, so we'll just be having the working session here at 5 o'clock. The items on the agenda are the introduction of the revised Dover Hill subdivision and city park concept plan. And does anyone else have any additional discussion items to put on the table tonight? All right, hearing none, then we'll move on to staff's presentation of Dover Hill.
Thank you. I do want to clarify for the members of the public, this is just a work session discussion, so there's no public hearing tonight or public comment, but there's also no decision being made. This is just a reintroduction of an item that, you know, we know there's been a lot of interest in this and it's kind of gone silent, so we wanted to bring back an update for you. So that's the purpose of tonight. I don't anticipate spending much more than an hour on it, even less. It's just you will see a formal application come forward probably at the next meeting that will go for public hearing and public input and go through that process again.
Once we receive a formal application, just for members of the public, we'll be doing public noticing for that as well. So be able to stay apprised of that once it gets scheduled.
Also, before I start, there is a representative from Ivory Homes here. If the commission has any questions that they want to ask, we can invite them up, but I'll leave that up to you, Jesse. Okay, so with that, I will go into this. I think many on the commission are familiar with this. If you're not on the commission, you may still be familiar with this. It's been going on a while, but I'm going to give just a quick background here. We are talking about the property at 3625, I think, Dover Hill Drive. It's a church meeting house property with a privately owned but recreation field. As part of it, it's about 6 acres. Back in 2019 or 2020, the church listed this for sale, and the city immediately expressed interest in purchasing all or part of it for use as a public park. Through a lengthy negotiation process, the city made an offer for half of the parcel and was countered with 2 acres from the church to be used as a public park, and then the remaining would be sold privately. And then Ivory was the company that came forward on that and signed a contract for the remaining acreage.
Thank you.
My slides didn't save, so I'm going to open PowerPoint. Sorry. This came in front of the Planning Commission maybe about a year ago for a planned unit development approval. I'm going to open that up here.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry. Okay. This will work better. This is what I just said. So basically, I'll just go over this one more time. The original property under contract with Ivory is constrained by fault lines, as I'll show you in a minute. The original property offered to the city, which is roughly the eastern 2 acres, is under contract right now. Subsequent to the fault study, Ivory and the city and church officials, who are still the owner and the seller of the property, have had ongoing discussions back and forth in multiple iterations on an alternate subdivision plan over the past several months. Ivory has prepared an updated conceptual draft plan for discussion, and that's what we'll go through tonight. The original, this is not what's up for discussion or for review. This may look familiar to those on the commission that have been here. This was the original planned unit development proposal that was planned. This is not the acreage that the city has under contract, but the city was concerned a little bit with that eastern 2 acres in terms of constrained lot width and kind of tricky access to the site. It wasn't very accessible to members of the public unless they lived right on that 7650 loop there. So the city was interested in a few things, in as much acreage as possible, in preserving the pavilion, and in more frontage and better access to the park from the wider neighborhood, including Dover Hill, which is kind of the main road to the west. So this proposal came about and went in front of the Planning Commission. This is a planned unit development, meaning Ivory requested exceptions on things like lot widths. So some of these lots are narrower than a standard lot, and reduce side setbacks. And that was a point of concern among the public and among the commission. Ultimately, the commission recommended or voted to approve this, but without the setback exception. After that, Ivory Homes went in and did a fault study. And I'm gonna show this here, and then I'll do the fault overlay next. It's easier to see on the TV screen if anyone's looking at the projector. The colors don't show up well. But the faults were identified and shown here. They really run through that central portion of the site. There are a number of different fault lines that really constrain that middle portion of the site and make it largely unbuildable for habitable structures. Interestingly, the acreage that the city has under contract is, maybe this eastern sliver here, kind of unobstructed by fault lines and hazards. Still has the same access and width and frontage issues, but doesn't have fault hazards. Those are in the middle of the site. Seeing this really changes the development potential on the site. This proposal here was 17 lots. That meets the density. If all of these lots were standard lots, the zoning here is R18, meaning each new lot has to have 8,000 square feet of lot size, certain frontage and things like that. But if you divide the total acreage by 8,000, the 17 lots was well within the allowable density. Obviously, with the site constraints and the location of those constraints, the development potential is quite a bit different now. So Ivory, again, in coordination with the city and church officials, have been working on an alternate plan to still propose a public park location and layout that achieves the city's priorities, which is size and access and if possible, preservation of amenities like that pavilion there. And they've come back with this preliminary concept plan. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. There we go. This is still a planned unit development, and I'll explain what is being requested in terms of that in a minute. But this shows an updated proposal with 13 total lots, not 17. 4 of which are on the western portion of the property, fronting Dover Hill Drive, and then 1 on Summer Hill Drive. The park under this concept is located right in that, that constrained portion of the site, which makes sense. You don't have to have habitable, you don't have to have fault setbacks when you're in a public space where there's no habitable structures. Under this concept, there is direct park access to and from Dover Hill Drive. And then, a lot of that park, maybe a third or a quarter of that northern frontage is just, or northern boundary line is just park space now. And then this provides quite a bit of access also from the loop, the Summer Hill Drive 7650 loop. And under this concept, the pavilion is preserved as well. There are, like I said, the 4 lots on the west side, the remaining 9 would be on the east side there. This would be a planned unit development, and they would be requesting a few setback modifications and frontage modifications. However, those modifications only apply to these lots on the far eastern side. And lot 9 here, the only modification requested is the eastern setback adjacent to Wasatch Boulevard. All of the other lot sizes and setbacks for lots 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 comply fully with R18 subdivision. Actually, all of these lots are over 5 and 9 are 12,000 square feet and 16,000 square feet respectively. And then 6, 7, and 8 are all over 9,000. The variations requested on 9, 10, 11, 12. On 9, it's just that setback, like I said. 10, 11, and 12, again, adjacent to Wasatch Boulevard, and then an undeveloped property to the south. They are requesting slightly less lot frontage there, actually only on 10 and 11, and then reduced setbacks as well. So this has been shown to city council members, and they are in favor, supportive of this concept. Obviously, it has to come through the planning commission to get that approval. Being a planned unit development, this would require a conditional use process where it's not just a subdivision preliminary plat approval process. It's It's the full conditional use process and it's governed by the plan unit development ordinance. We don't have a formal submittal on this yet, so this is just a concept draft for discussion to bring the planning commission up to speed. But this is 13 lots. There is another concept that was designed. Oh, the other variation requested would be the private road with the T hammerhead turnaround. We ran this concept by the fire department. They don't have issues with it. It complies with their codes. So in terms of that, that would be our main concern there is emergency access and things like that. I'll show you the standard subdivision concept because, we think that one of these two concepts will come forward, the PUD or the standard subdivision. The standard subdivision is this one. This has slightly less park space. This green on the east side of the road is part of the private lot. It's just stormwater retention, so that's not part of the park. Under this concept, you still have that good access to Dover Hill Drive and quite a bit of good park access and park space there. This one would likely not preserve that pavilion, and it is less park acreage than the PUD concept. This is a 10-lot subdivision concept. All of these lots fully comply with city ordinance for R18. So if this were the one that came forward, this would be, it would still have to come through planning commission because it's 10 lots and that's a subdivision that requires public hearing. However, there's not a lot of input the commission can give on this. Being a standard subdivision, does it meet the code or does it not? And if it does, it's entitled to approval. So this is largely, what you see, what you get kind of thing here. A couple of fewer lots, but
How big
some
is the park
trade-offs.
space in that?
On this one, it's what? Oh, I got it here.
1.5.
I think it's 1.59, or the other one, it's about 1.9. But 1.6 on that one and 1.9 on this one. There are still some negotiations going on from a real estate side on park development costs and things like that. And, the city's concerned about some of those things. Obviously, developing the park in this location is much different than the eastern 2-acre location because this location right now is, terraced ground and parking lot and church building and things like that. So there's some ongoing discussions there that the city's still working on. Assuming those get resolved, what will come forward is one of these two concepts. And again, I think the preference of staff and the feedback we got from the city council is this one. Gives more optimal park space, doesn't have substantially different impact to adjacent properties between the planned unit development and the standard subdivision. This has 4 lots adjacent to the northern properties. This one's got 5, but all of these 5 lots are mostly compliant with the zoning standards.
Who is making the improvements on the park? Is
That's being discussed, but that's a big part of the equation here. That staff and the council are that's a priority to get that figured out.
what's the background on the city buying that piece of land or buying the park piece of land?
Yeah, we had heard it went up for sale, and a lot of the neighborhood historically has used the baseball field that's there as kind of neighborhood scale public park access. And there was a lot of concern of that going away. There's a whole history there that there's media articles and stuff like that out there. We could go way down a rabbit hole on that, but the takeaway is, hey, it's hard to find new park space, especially in a city like Cottonwood Heights. This property is for sale. 3 acres of it really is already open space, albeit private. This is a real opportunity for the city to come in and preserve some of that as public park space moving forward. And it's a neighborhood scale park space. There's not a real walkable park location in this whole area right now.
So with it being a fault line though, so that's undevelopable right out the gate, being a fault line. So the preservation, just based on geography, creates it as that type of the space. So I guess that's more so my question. Why is the city doing that instead of the developer?
I never said they are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
again, that's all part of what's being discussed, but we see the same thing, obviously, right? This can't be developed with habitable structures.
Perfect.
The land under contract by the city right now can. there's some value there, and you know, everyone seems to be on generally the same page about that, without going into too much detail.
Perfect.
So I just wanted to show the commission this. I'm happy to answer any questions or, you know, if you have questions of the developer of Ivory and want to hear from them, you're certainly welcome to do that. If we hadn't come back for discussion tonight, I think the plan would be that Ivory would submit a subdivision application for this concept here, and we'd move forward with that version of this. And this, I want to reiterate, this is after, you know, some rounds of internal dialogue back and forth to get it to this point. There were some priorities of, you know, the mayor and members of the council and staff that we wanted to see incorporated here. And to Ivory's credit, they did incorporate a lot of the things that we had asked them to, in terms of, you know, not varying those lots, making sure the impact to adjacent neighbors is thoughtfully, you know, designed around. So I mean, this, again, this could be, you know, they can design this right now. This likely meets all city standards, and this, you know, this could be what we see here. This one gives us just a little better park space. It gives a couple more lots for the developer, but you know, it's not substantially more impactful than the 10 lot concept there.
So where the properties are, the backing up against the existing neighborhood, all those setbacks,
The north end, the top of
these
the,
those all meet.
Setback and width and size. And
It's over on the Wasatch Boulevard side. And what is on lot 9? What is that east?
Well, they're showing a 5-foot easement. I don't know that they would build a house 5 feet away from Wasatch Boulevard, but that's what they're showing is a you know, 5-foot separation between the building pad and the property line.
And between 8 and 9 is.
Those are just your standard.
Standard, okay.
Yeah.
from 9 and then headed south is where you see the subdivision.
So at 10 and 11, what
Dropping down,
are the requests on 10 and 11?
those reduced setbacks.
The south side on 10, it's the, sorry, make this bigger, maybe I can zoom in.
Okay.
This south side setback here on 10. On 11, it's both sides. And on 12, it's the north side. And then the width of these lots is not quite, on 10 and 11 is not quite 70 feet, which is what's required.
It is more contained
Square footage wise,
by
are they
one another with what the requests
Big enough.
are.
They are all 8,000s, the minimum. These are all over 9,000. Lot 11 is the smallest and it's 9,095. And then over here on Dover Hill, these are all 9,500 plus.
I know that it will be that T is a private road.
Yeah,
I'm just curious where snow would go.
they would need to provide a plan for that.
Okay.
Yeah, they would do the snow removal and provide like a snow shed.
Shed
that would be
somewhere.
put. I think-
Because yeah, a certain amount of it has to be kept clear for emergency
I think
access.
if that level of detail would be provided if this is the one they move forward with. But again, tonight's just kind of that conceptual level of.
Yeah, and our initial kind of
Exactly.
questions about.
Sure.
Is there any parking for the park?
That would be part of, so what's shown here is no park design by any means. So yes, there would probably be limited parking. I think this has always been envisioned as a neighborhood scale park. You know, I don't want to speak for the mayor and council, something akin to like a Golden Hills Park where there's limited parking. It's a passive type park. You know, it's not something where I think we'd envision soccer games to be played and leagues, you know, sports leagues and stuff like that, but a walking trail and, you know, some amenities like that.
Some nice green space.
I would recommend that even though it's not about the park design, that we show a placeholder for some sort of parking in whatever plan.
Yeah, so
comes
I do want
before
to
us.
clarify that there is part of the ongoing discussions is to come up with a very preliminary park design concept.
But I mean, even just if it just showed a rectangle of gray
Sure.
that is like,
Yeah.
hey, we don't know how many stalls, but we know we're gonna have some.
Yeah, I think that's fully the intention here because you want to have some parking in this.
Because I
Because
feel
how many
like
people does
that's,
it serve? You know, how many people does this park actually serve in general?
I feel like that's gonna be, again, the comments we received a year ago and we're going to receive them again is, people don't want a lot of parking in their neighborhood
Right,
on the street.
correct, yeah. So you should, I would think by the time there's a formal public hearing, you'll see that level of detail. It is being worked on, so.
I think this is a really sensitive response to what the discussion was a year ago. I mean, the issue I had was the setbacks and them not putting a revision to the setbacks on Dover Hill or along the north and only putting it along Wasatch seems like a really reasonable compromise.
Also, I'll note the proposed exceptions to the setbacks are again adjacent to the other lots that have that. Not adjacent to a lot where it's the standard
And they're all
setbacks.
new lots, so.
Yeah.
Someone who acquires those lots
It's-
will have a full understanding that was.
It's new lots or it's, it's adjacent to Wasatch
Wasatch,
Boulevard
yeah.
or this vacant parcel to the south.
That one's not, the one, that's not short though, is it?
Well, I can't tell what this south setback on 12 is. The size and everything is fine. It just might be this southern setback here. They might be asking for relief. I can't tell. I can measure that later. I can't tell right now.
It's just really nice when. The variance only relates to their own ground.
Interior to the.
Yeah.
Sure.
To their own.
And that was, as the chair mentions, this is different from what we saw a year ago.
Yeah,
where that
this is the
was-
one from a year ago where I think most of these lots were requesting 5-foot setbacks instead of the 8-foot minimum.
Interesting evolution of the project to see how it's changed.
And I also like how the park, I mean, naturally with the fault lines, ends up with an entrance on Dover Hill and on 7650, like you mentioned. But that's really, I mean, almost like if you could have your preferred park layout, it might be this to maximize your public access.
Yeah, certainly Dover Hill is a much, I don't want to say busier, but it serves a lot more of that neighborhood than Summerhill and 7650. This is just an internal loop kind of thing. So having, under the previous concept, we had a pathway, like a little bypass route there that was 8 to 10 feet wide. Having some actual visible park frontage here, that's, about the width of a lot, 60, 70 feet wide. Certainly from a neighborhood access standpoint and from a walkable access standpoint is pretty good.
As I recall, another conversation that we had during public comment was about the product that they were proposing.
Mhm.
So I would advise again that the more they can offer in that regard to help people understand what their expectation is for these is probably
Sure.
better.
Yeah, and that's, it's part of that PUD submittal process, so. Sure they're aware of that.
There also could be some perhaps perceived benefit to going the PUD route to have a little bit more dialogue about the design versus a standard subdivision where again, it sort of doesn't meet the entitlement standards or not. Perhaps with that PUD, there's more of a process for design dialogue on the product.
So the in lot 13, how it has an edge of it, it appears to be part of the stormwater basin, right?
Yeah,
Are there different kinds of guidelines about how far back you have to build because it's a storm?
from a stormwater.
water?
So no, so what they'll have to do, and I don't know if this is engineered at all yet, it probably isn't. Is they will take the whole acreage here and calculate, the amount of runoff and stormwater collected. And that'll give them a number, then they have to build retention or detention areas that hold a certain capacity.
Mhm.
I can't even explain it in more detail than that because it's an engineering thing. So I think they're just showing how they would achieve that in a few different ways to handle the runoff created from this whole property. You can do low impact design where you're using landscaping and things like that to let water seep in and limit the amount you're putting in the city storm drain system. You can build these kind of depression areas where the water does seep in. You see that a lot in parks.
We do see the retention on private lots throughout the city, throughout other developments. I think one thing we would expect as staff, just to make sure that that's effective stormwater management solution is a stormwater agreement to make sure it's maintained. Sometimes if you have them on private property, if there's not education pieces done with buyers, they're not aware why there's a depression in their lot and won't go to fill it in. So if that's how they're handling their stormwater, we would, I think, do some proactive steps to make sure that it were communicated and maintained. But we do see it on other lots throughout the city.
What is the building envelope square footage on the three largest properties there? So 13.5
One.
One. Well, that's a good question. I don't remember the calculation, the area of a trapezoid. I can let you know. I don't know. These ones here are, 60 by 60 roughly. So, just the buildable area on lot one, I suppose, is the biggest. Lot one's weird, because you can see the weird shape there. Clearly, part of it is the fault line right here. So they've put the buildable footprint outside of that.
I'm curious if there's anything that we can do to modify those, just because you have the three largest square footage homes right on the park. So it's going to just have kind of massing right on the park, a lot larger massing right on the park that will enclose it a little bit more versus, some of these other lots they're smaller, more staggered.
We have it within code a requirement for a minimum buildable area. If we have any maximums.
The park setbacks, they're 20 feet. They're bigger setbacks than than the rest, even than like lot 4 here.
But they'll be allowed to build fences in the PUD. Is that right? So they'd be fenced.
They could be.
Can you fence through the middle of that stormwater retention?
Probably not.
May end up opting to perhaps fence.
Yeah, you can fence,
Around
like that kind of thing, yeah.
Looks like there's a predicted easement on there that would allow access onto the private property for maintenance.
What's the access look like to the rest of the community? If you were to kind of Google Maps over this, as far as how the community accesses the park?
Sure, let me,
Do you want me to pull one up?
oh, there's a hand up on Zoom. Commissioner Chapel?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I had wanted to raise the parking issue as well, but you all have already covered it. Thanks.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
And then we'll just note, we see some hands up from the attendee side. We are not doing a public hearing on this item because it's a work session, so it's just a conceptual discussion. Once this item is actually formally applied for, it will come to a business meeting where there will be a public hearing. So we won't be taking public comment tonight.
Does anyone on the commission want to ask any questions to the applicant?
So this here, so the
At this moment.
Summerhill 7650 is kind of this closed loop of houses here. And then Dover Hill. If I zoom out, is this road. You can see my mouse, I'll move it slow. Kind of see where that's tucked in there.
So they'll have about 70 feet on each side to access, give or take.
About, yeah, well, much more than 70 feet from the interior loop, and yeah, I don't know, something like that from Dover Hill. Which is 70 more feet than any previous version has had.
Is there an access right there now? Is there a driveway right there?
Yeah, well. Yes, there's a drive approach on the very north side of that.
And
church
then
park.
farther down on Dover Hill where a
Everyone
lot
here.
would be.
So that's all we had. This is more an update and to kind of give you a heads up and get any, any pressing questions and comments. I think the feedback on the park design concepts or, some idea of parking is good. I do expect that when this goes to public hearing to have, even a concept of that. And then we'll keep updating the commission on the development negotiation side of things as well, but the commission's role in all this is really entitlement of either a plan unit development or standard subdivision, regardless of the final layout.
The other thing that came up was the topography, last time we
Uh-huh.
saw this and what it might be nice to see a site section through like running north-south.
Yeah, I think we asked for that last time and they'll have to provide a concept grading plan as well. With the full submittal. But that's a good point on the cross section. I think we had that last time, so
Yeah.
we'll ask for that
We'd
again.
be interested in seeing that with either direction, correct? Whether it's standard subdivision or PUD.
I don't know if I can require it on the standard.
Okay.
But if we can, then yes.
Okay.
In particular, the lot line to the north.
The
Understanding
northern.
how that compares to the existing homes.
Well,
Sure.
I can always ask.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions from any commissioners online? Not hearing any from either of our virtual participants.
Have we done an assessment of the existing pavilion? Is it in good enough shape?
I think it's in. If it doesn't move, yeah, it's in good enough shape to keep where it is, I believe. We haven't done a full structural analysis or anything.
Benefit from some TLC, perhaps with like refinishing or sealing. But I know it's I don't know, from the feedback we've heard, it seems like a important piece for a lot of community members who've expressed a lot of interest in seeing it preserved. So anecdotally, I would assume it's still in, usable condition there.
Yeah, and it makes sense from an economic perspective for the city.
Sure, yeah.
It's also potentially just kind of like a cool historical piece to keep from the past phase into a new design.
Yeah.
But we would certainly look into that with a park design if it needed to be replaced or revamped.
So what is the role of the architectural review board would be in all of this as well? I'm just.
Only in a plan unit development
Right.
do they get involved, and then it would go to them for design review, basically. Not necessarily architecture and design of each specific home, because we do have state code now that really limits our ability to do that, but landscaping and site layouts and tree planting and fencing and things like that.
They have to provide design guidelines as well for the internal development, so that would be presumably a piece they would look over. It's not in the city's gateway overlay district, which is when we typically see ARC review on items. So again, if it were a standard subdivision, that wouldn't be coming through. And as Mike notes, there was a recent bill passed at the state level that limits local control over architecture, but with the PUD, I think it's something we would still ask for.
Have there been any proposals of kind of different types of, and I know that historically there's been high density proposals on this and all that, but just integrating into the community. I know that there's some multifamily just to the west of this. Has Ivory proposed anything where there might be just different types of density, not super low or super high, but just different types of density?
No, their intention all along was to comply with zoning out there today. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what they've done. Yeah.
Perfect.
So if there's nothing else, I think you can plan to see a more detailed version of that concept brought forward, likely at the next meeting. And again, for the public, that will be noticed and there will be plenty of opportunity to review the full materials. And this slideshow tonight, it will be public, so I'm happy to provide that or have that posted. It'll be posted with the minutes, I believe, as well.
Yeah, and I'll just note for the public record for anyone interested, we have a general planning email with anybody who has questions, is always welcome to reach out to it. It's just the word planning@ch.utah.gov. So I know sometimes we might make things easy to find on the website. It can be a lot of information to try to click through. So if you ever have questions, you're welcome to send questions to that email address and we can update you there. But we would be seeing public noticing for an actual application and an opportunity for public comment, which I think is always important. So keep that in mind. We don't have any minutes on today's agenda, so we'll just be a little bit backlogged when we get to December. When we have our next business meeting, we'll do a few rounds of minutes there. So that was pushed.
All right, does anyone have any other questions or discussion items? Or do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for the.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the update, yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming out for a work session, you guys.